Today I found out that our milk price took another massive drop, which makes this week's video extremely timely. We are going to work out my cost of production for the first time in 2 years. I honestly have no idea what it's going to be. And then we are going to look at some ways I can save money. Oh no, I broke the door. But before we sit down and look at our finances, I'm going to follow up on a request which a lot of you made in the comments from last week's video. I'm going to show you all us actually milking the cows. My dad's away today, so it's just me and Calvin. So it's a great opportunity to do it. But before we get to that, we have to push the silage into the cows. Shh. Come on. Shh. Come on. Shh. That's the milking done. It is far too warm to be November. Oh my goodness. I'll see you in the morning to work out how much this costs us to produce a litre of milk. That's going to be fun. Welcome back to Friday. It has honestly taken me the entire week to work out how much it costs me to produce milk. It has been an unbelievable amount of work. And it's been really, really boring work. But we got it done, eventually. Honestly, if I didn't have the pressure of a YouTube video, I never would have finished it. There is a good reason I haven't worked out my cost of production for over 2 years. Because when you don't have to, you really don't want to. Let's just check there's no cows calving. And whilst I've spent a lot of time working out how much I'm spending, I've also spent quite a bit of time this week working out how I'm going to save money, including actually saving some money. So after I roll this cover back in the silage pit, we're going to head into the office. We're going to look at how much it cost me to produce a litre of milk last year. And then we're going to discuss my options to cut my cost of production for this year and survive the next 12 months. And for those of you who aren't dairy farmers, since I last spoke to you, the situation with the milk price has got significantly worse. But we'll get onto that when I'm inside in the warm, because it is absolutely freezing today. And yes, I know I shouldn't be wearing shorts, but I just hate trousers. Oh, outdoor silos suck. Cover always blows about. It's amazing how well that silage face has kept, considering the oxygen barrier doesn't start till up here. I want to try and keep a really tight line across this face. I don't want air getting under it, because we're not eating through this very fast at all. Ugh. Oh, my hands are all dirty now. Oh my goodness, slippy. That bit's got a hole in it. Oh, oh man. Stop blowing about. That'll never move. If I jump while I slip. Athlete. Right, welcome back to the lab, where it is nice and warm and much better place to spend my afternoon rather than being outside. This week we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to talk continuously to camera. I'm going to try and not edit this section at all. That is ambitious. I probably will end up editing a little bit, but I need to get better at this. And there's 3 reasons why I need to get better at just talking to camera and not relying on an edit. Number 1, I have become too reliant on editing my videos. I repeat lines all the time. I'm leaving big pauses between things I say, and then it's hard to match the video up again. I've just got too used to editing videos. I've got too used to recording things in short sentences. I need to break out of that bad habit. Reason number 2 we're trying this week is that I want to start a live show. I've mentioned this before, but I have got everything set up for it now. I've upgraded my internet. We'll get to that later. That's part of my cost saving. I have got like a little stream deck. I've organized transitions for the live stream. I've made all of that. And the plan is to start it this week coming as like a practice run, so that when the budget comes out on Wednesday 2 weeks, I will be able to do a live show that will actually be semi-flawless and professional. That's the goal. And then the third reason is that it's currently 3:30 on Friday afternoon. I'm away this evening and I'm away tomorrow, so I need to get this video finished. And honestly, working out the cost of production took so much time. So much longer than I ever had expected. Anyway, enough waffling, let's get into the video. So this is 13 years of financial records, including cost of productions, going way back to when I first came home to farm in 2012. And this is going to be the basis for the rest of this video. We're going to look at what it's currently costing me in 24-25, as in the year that ended in April. And then we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about how I'm going to cut costs, because that is more interesting. It's more useful to look forward rather than looking back. To give you an idea as to where them figures came from, we will flick to this screen, and my farm software basically gives me a dairy gross margin. It calculates it the same way every single year. So even if the figures are slightly off or slightly wrong, they are consistent. So it is the trend that matters. And if you look at the bottom here, this tells you my cost of production as a slightly different figure. It includes replacements as a cost, things like that. It's complicated. You don't need to worry about it. But essentially, my current cost of production, to spoil the surprise, is sitting at around 40p, which is horrendous and horrific and alarming and all of them things. We also have this folder document, which helps a little bit. This is like my KPIs. The thing I want to really draw your attention to is our concentrate section. And as some of you may know, I was short of silage last year. So I got a feeder wagon, I fed a lot of meal, and it really did let me out of a hole because it didn't run out of silage. And it actually also made sense because of the milk price. But I did not realize how much meal I fed last year. Normally, we sit with a milk from forage, which is how much milk I produce just from grass, at around 2,500 litres. Last year, it was down to 242 litres. I went from feeding about 2.5 tonne a cow to 3.9 tonnes of feed per cow. Unbelievable. My feed rate went from 0.3 kilograms a litre to 0.43 kilograms a litre. What? But in fairness, it did make sense. As you'll see up here, my yield per cow increased by 650 litres. So it made financial sense, but my goodness did I feed a lot of extra meal. Anyway, let's keep this video moving along. Back to our big spreadsheet of numbers, and I'm going to hide most of these rows. Basically, cost of production started around 24p when I first came home. We dropped it down to 18p in 2015-16. It was stable at 20p all the way up until the Ukraine war in 2022. And since then, it's kind of got out of control, to be honest. Now, I'm going to say straight away that if you look at this row at the bottom here, which is our cost of production, that is not how much I could be paid and still survive as a business. I have to get me and my dad's wages out of that, which is a significant amount of money. We also have to cover repayments on loans and hire purchase agreements out of that, which is again a significant amount of money. And we also have to cover tax out of that, which can be a significant amount of money. So as a general rule of thumb, you need to add about 10 pence at least to that figure for it to be an accurate reflection of what I need to survive as a business. And when we do that, you will see that in the last year, it has cost me about 39 pence to produce a litre of milk. Now, you may notice that is slightly lower than the figure on the previous document, and that is because of where the replacements come in. In this version, which is the Department of Agriculture version, the replacements are taken off your output, whereas in my version, they're added on top of a cost. That's the difference. If we look down this row quickly and just pick out a few highlights before we get to the point, which is how I'm going to survive the next year, you will see that our milk yield is up significantly. This is actual values of milk sold down the lane plus milk fed to calves. Milk price was also up on 23-24, but surprisingly for me, it actually wasn't that close to 22-23. In my head, I expected this to have been the best year ever for milk price, but it really wasn't, which I was surprised with. You also notice concentrates, you see that big increase. Another notable increase, although it's not a lot of money, but it is a big shift from where we normally are, it has been in our vet bill. Basically, we've had to vaccinate for everything now. Expect this to go to like £45 for the year coming, which sucks. Scroll all the way down. You can look through all them costs if you want. You can pause the screen, but the headline is our net profit was actually pretty disappointing. I was surprised, to be honest. It was as low as it is. It was up on the year previous, which was 2023-24, but not by a huge amount. Definitely not considering the milk price had been increasing. And it was actually worse than 2021-22. So in 2021-22, at a milk price of 33p, we managed to generate £1,240 a cow profit. Whereas at a better milk price of 39p, we were only able to generate £850 profit. And it just comes down to inflation within our costs that really has driven that number so low. So that sets the scene for you. Our costs have increased dramatically. We are producing milk at the highest cost we have ever produced milk. It is up 50% on just 4 years ago. And now we are heading into a market where the milk price is collapsing at an absolutely alarming rate. Yeah, this sucks. So I've put in the figures. I've adjusted a few figures. For example, I'm assuming we are going to go back to the level of meal we normally feed, which is pretty certain. We have accounted for a drop in milk yield because there will be an impact of that. I've also taken a little bit off our forage costs because I'm going to have far too much silage going into next year. So I'm probably going to be able to sow a little fertilizer, a little less fertilizer. And also when the milk price is bad, I will sacrifice some P and K. I will use the reserves in my soil more. So that probably is realistic. I'm reluctant to change anything else because it's just, there's no point in changing numbers without a reason. I have put up property repairs because in the current summer we have spent a lot of money on drainage and repairing a roof. So that's going to push that figure up. Basically, bottom line, April to April, we're expected to make about the same amount of money as we did in the previous April to April. And our cost of production has fallen by about 2.5 pence. But it's kind of misleading because of when the financial year is. Because it's April to April, we kind of have half a good year in that set of figures, which isn't telling the true story of where things could go. So now we're going to look a little bit further ahead, and we're going to go with the assumption, the realistic assumption, that milk price is probably going to be around the 30p mark come next spring. And if you take that forward for the next year, which I honestly worry and expect will probably be where the milk price sits, it tells a very different story. So at a milk price of 30 pence, if we keep all our other costs pretty much the same, because again, if you don't have a reason to cut the costs, you can't just take a number out of thin air. We end up with a profit figure of just £443 a cow. Now bear in mind what I said about I need a 10 pence margin to survive. A 10 pence a litre margin on 185 cows. Let me see if I can work this out. How am I going to do this? The amount of litres times by 10 pence divided by the number of cows is £820. So to balance our cash flow, we need a net profit figure of £820. But on 30p, which the general consensus is that's where we're heading, and a lot of people now say it could be much worse than that, at 30p we are £380 short on the year, which if I times that by 185 cows is £70,000. Okay, so that's the deficit that we're facing, even if on balance the current financial year is looking like it might break even. Right, so we need to cut costs. That is what this is telling us, is we need to drastically cut costs. And I guess one of the things which does give me some hope, I suppose, is that in 2021-22, our costs were significantly lower. Our overhead costs were £431 versus a predicted £713. Our variable costs were pretty much the same. They tend to not change that much. And our total overhead costs were £330 lower. So there is scope there to cut costs. The challenge is it's quite difficult. You know, there's not a huge one ticket item that's going to get you there. It's lots of small things. So I'm going to give you a few examples of what I have done already and what I'm going to plan to do as to how I'm going to cut costs. And these are small changes, but you just got to keep chipping away at these small changes, and eventually you will get there. So we'll start at the top. I have already reduced my replacements down to 300. That is realistically as low as they're going to go. We do have less heifers this year to come through. We do not have a surplus anymore. We sold a lot of heifers when we got open from TB. So bearing in mind that the historic number is around 220, that is realistic in reflecting the increase in value of them heifers. If, like I suspect, the value of stock drops, we would be able to change that down. But for now, we're going to leave that where it is because we've also pushed up the calf value. So they're kind of balancing each other out, to be perfectly honest. Forage costs, I don't see fertilizer coming down to anywhere close to the level it was in 2020. Mainly because of horrendous government policy. The CBAM stuff is going to add 40 to 80 pounds a tonne on fertilizer. Importantly, the CBAM stuff does not come into force in the UK until 2027. So if your fertilizer merchant is telling you that they're putting up prices because of CBAM and you live in the UK, they are lying scumbags, okay? So bear that in mind. But if we look back at the last few years, it would be unrealistic to go lower on fertilizer. So we can't go any lower. Concentrates, right, concentrates. Well, I have fixed my price to March, and unfortunately, it looks like the price of straights is increasing. So is it realistic to pull that back? I honestly don't think so. I think that is where it's been. That is where it was in 23, 24 when the milk price was quite bad. I don't think I can pull much more efficiency out of my cows, especially when I'm assuming I'm going to hold extra milk yield. So it's going to have to stay there. Vet and medicine. I will do well to hold that at £37. I have to vaccinate now. I was really badly hit with BVD because we had a naive herd with no immunity. So we can't change that. Breeding. I think we can make some savings on breeding costs. The price of straws, the price of semen has got a bit ridiculous. And I think it is realistic to go back to the kind of £27 a cow figure. You know, I think that's realistic. Maybe not buy the fanciest bulls. Also, no one's going to have money. It's going to pull the price back a bit. We'll go £27. Sundry costs. I have no idea why this was so high. Sundry costs is one of them things you just bunch everything into. I think we could probably get that a bit lower. Just one of them things where when you're squeezed, you try harder. One of the things I really need to do is stop just buying stuff from Thane Valley stores and actually put in a bulk order and price around, because I'm definitely being shafted on my sundries. Maybe we'll go 80. We'll go 80, right? We'll be ambitious. So there we go. That's our variable costs. Best case, like I don't think there's any room to move them any lower. And we're at about where we were in 2022, 23. So that's our goal. Moving into overhead costs. Machinery depreciation, that is a calculated value. I have bought new machinery that is going to push that figure up. It's not a cash value, but it's not going to come down. But I don't want to put it up because I'll make my numbers look worse. Let's just leave it where it is. Machinery running costs, again, this is repairs and stuff. It's definitely going to be lower unless I have a big breakdown or something. We will be ambitious, and we're going to say 70, okay? That's ambitious, but realistic. Fuel costs, again, I actually think fuel could be cheaper going forward. Drill, baby, drill, and all of that. So, also, I think the Ukraine war is going to come to an end in the next 6 months. If you haven't been following it, Ukraine is basically capitulating. It's in the last 2 weeks, Russia has gained more ground than they have in a year. Eventually, they're going to have to end it. Also, Zelensky has been really hit with a big corruption scandal. He is basically like he's toast at this point. So let's assume the war does end within the next 6 months. that's got to have a negative effect on energy prices, right? So let's go with 70. Okay, we're making some wild predictions at this point, but I need my numbers to add up. Contractor charges, I am really going to try and hammer this in the next year. That is going to be difficult, but I'm going to try and do more work myself. I'm going to split up my silage so I need less help. I'm going to do all the slurry myself if possible. I am really going to try to hammer the contractor charges. Where am I going to get them to? I'm going to say £105. Okay. Yeah, we'll go with that. Building depreciation, again, I can't do anything about that. That is a calculated value. Property repairs, right? This is the big one, okay? I spent on non-essential items £125,000 last year. And about half of that was on drainage and stones and stuff like that. So all of that's been wiped out. The capital cost of machinery, the other half of that comes into depreciation and stuff. So we can't just wipe it out, but we can say we are not reseeding a single field. We are not draining anything. We are doing nothing next year. Okay. But there will still be a few property repairs, but it's going to be much similar to this sort of thing. So let's go with 10, right? We are doing nothing next year. Electricity. This is something I've already done. I have already changed my electric from Power NI to a new company. So how much am I going to save? I haven't worked this out. I should have done this ahead of time, but I haven't. I am saving approximately 2 pence per kilowatt. So that is 155 kilowatts a day times by 2 pence, right? Is £3.10 a day. Times by 365 days, we are going to save £1,131 divided by our 185 cows. That is £6 off our electric. Let's go. 39. That is a great result. And Power and I actually put the prices up. So the saving could potentially even be more than that. But we're going 39 for that. That's not bad, actually. Look at that in 2022, 23. Also, Ukraine war ending. I was going to say I could drop it further, but I just fixed my price for 12 months. That might have been a mistake. Anyway, we'll move on. Water and rates doesn't change. Business and admin cost. This is another cost I have already saved. I have changed my internet provider. BT were going to put another £5 onto my internet, which would have taken my 2 phone lines and my 2 internet services to an astonishing £156 a month. I have managed to secure a deal with Elon Musk for Starlink for £75, and it is serving 2 homes, possibly even 3, if my brother agrees to pay me £20 a month. So we have reduced our cost by £80 a month on our utilities, which is £960 a year, divided by 185 cows, £5.20 off this cost. That is a game changer. We're taking every 20p we get, right? Miscellaneous costs, you know what? We're going to save £1. I don't know how, but we're going to save £1. And that takes us to our total common overhead cost of 1544, which is in line with 21, 22, 22, 23, and it is a significant reduction on the previous year. Like, we've managed to shave off £450 there on our costs, mainly from concentrate, but them little things do actually add up and make a difference. Paid labour, I have potentially got less people milking by like 1 milking a week. I potentially need to cut that back more. I'm not sure, because then I will have to do it. Is my time better spent doing other things like making videos? I don't know. We will leave that where it is. We'll leave that where it is. Conacre, again, this is another really prickly one because you never want to give up land. But I definitely now have too much land for the grass I need. But that's not necessarily a bad complaint. So more than likely, we're going to leave that where it is. If the road does not go ahead, the A5, I'm going to have way too much land, but I guess I could maybe sublet some of it or something. We're leaving that where it is. Finance charges, they will be coming down a bit. I have a couple of loans drop off in the middle of next year, which will really help my cash flow. Unfortunately, that does not come into this figure. And that's pretty much it. That is where we end up. So our total cost of production per litre, we have managed to tweak it down to 24.6, which is not bad. We have managed to up our net profit to £681, which again is not bad. And if we now do the calculation of how much money I am likely to be short in the next 12 months, it is £140 times the number of cows, £26,000. That's manageable. I can afford to be down £26,000. That is assuming a milk price of 30p, which I suspect may be ambitious, but there you go. That is our plan. That's how I'm going to save money. So to recap, we are going to try and hold milk output whilst cutting meal. Who is phoning me? Do they not know I'm trying to record a video? So I have good news. We have managed to secure an extra 0.8 pence per kilowatt discount. So we can actually go and reduce our electric cost by another £1 a cow. That is genuinely who just phoned me. Oh my goodness. Right, there we go. So what was I saying? I'm totally lost now. Right, let's draw this video to a close. I have to go milk my cows. So that's the financial figures done. It took me about 10 or 12 hours to pull all that together. And that doesn't include the fact that I had all my VAT records online on a database that I could just query. It didn't include that I had all the code done to pull all the information down for me. It is a lot of work to get an accurate cost of production. That is the honest reason why people don't do it, but it is absolutely well worth it. And it is worth it for two main reasons. Number one, I now know where I am and I know where I'm going. And if I know where I am and I know where I'm going, I can put a plan in place to try and improve my situation. I can try and cut my costs early and not just run out of money in 6 months' time. And the second reason it's really useful is if I do run out of money, which if this milk price crash is worse than people expect or lasts longer than people expect, I certainly will run out of money. It gives me the information to go to my bank manager and say, look, I clearly have a profitable business. It is an efficient business. The market downturn is the worst since 2015. I might need some help to make it through the next 12, 18 months. And they will obviously say yes. That is why banks are there. That is why debt exists. So it gives me the certainty that I know I have a good argument, a good case to present, so that if I do need some extra cash, which I've never needed to date, but I have a feeling this is going to be an exceptionally bad downturn, to be honest, that option is there. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you all found this video interesting. I know it was very nerdy and technical, but I think it's the right time to do a video like that. And hopefully for some of the dairy farmers out there who are facing a similar situation to me, it might give you some ideas as to how you could save some money. I will end this by simply saying that the most important thing is to just attempt to improve your situation. You're not going to solve the problem. You're not going to avoid losing money. But even small changes multiplied out over 12 or 24 months can have a big impact at the end of the day. So reprice your dairy nuts. Shop around. Don't stick to the same supplier. When you're buying fertilizer, try and use cheaper things like buy straights, not compounds. Try and feed efficiently. You can feed efficiently and not lose milk yield. It's difficult to do. It is possible. Look at the small costs. Is your internet too expensive? Have you changed electric supplier recently? There are some really good deals out there a minute if you look. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you probably on Wednesday, but no guarantees because honestly, I have no idea what's going on in my life. If you do want to see the live show, if you subscribe and ring that little bell, it'll give you a notification of when I actually go live in case my schedule isn't what I expect. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. Hopefully you've learned something. And I'll see you next week.